What's your screensaver there?
It's from Dragon Ball Super. It's a ramen shop in space.
Oh, of course it is.
Dude, wouldn't you want to go to some random asteroid and get ramen or other foods?
But see, here's the thing. I do eat ramen and you don't.
Well, we don't have to... It doesn't have to be specifically ramen, but that's why I said other foods. So...
I hate it when he does that.
Oh my gosh. They hate it when I do it. Because I found during the last stream, I did it a lot right into the microphone. They hated it. And a lot of them were like, oh man, you shouldn't do that. It's bad for you. And it's like, no, it's not. It's like, I watch doctor videos on YouTube. They say it's fine. And I won't get arthritis. Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we had Kinda. Dad, what happened on Kinda?
I have no bloody idea.
It was something... the Doctor and his companions ended up on this planet where there were these colonizers and the natives known as the Kinda, and there was a demon called the Mara, and... Yeah.
That's more than I got out of it.
That's the general premise. Also, I didn't realize this until after we watched the episode, but our nice schedule maker did include another clip. It wasn't just a new clip that we missed or something, but it was an updated version of the 4th episode where they have the giant snake puppet, but instead they remastered it so they CG'd in a snake, so it looks like not corny 80s giant snake monster. Wouldn't have helped the story, but that was...
It's like, who was it? George Lucas, all the new CG stuff that he put in Return of the Jedi didn't help that story either.
Yeah. I don't mind Return of the Jedi. I feel like it gets a lot of flack. Anyway. I am excited to read the Kinda comments because we're recording this before Kinda goes out to YouTube. So it should be interesting now that it's a widely regarded classic episode.
I haven't had a chance to watch it. You sent me the link, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet either. So,
and I've only read the comments from the people on Patreon, and it's... I don't know, it's interesting. It's fun. But that's not the point of today's episode.
Yeah, and one last thing. In that episode, if you watch it, there's going to be towards the end, you'll hear us making a comment about the Oklahoma weather. Last week, at this time, we had thunderstorms with hail and high winds. And today, 7 days later, it's freezing outside again.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of an old joke about here when Mother Nature says... You can't have all 4 seasons in 1 week. Oklahoma says, hold my beer.
Yeah, it really does try to give you everything. So, it'll probably be 100 degrees next week. Who knows? Alright, well, this week we have the 6th Doctor serial Vengeance on Varos, which, from what I have been told after we watched Kinda, this is a return to form on these classic Who reactions. So, yeah, it... should be pretty interesting. This is where we say no spoilers in the comments whatsoever. Let's stick to this episode and previous episodes of Doctor Who Classic, Torchwood, and the Sarah Jane Adventures that I or we have reacted to. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. So, unless you've got anything else to say.
Nope, roll tape.
Alright, then let's get going on Vengeance on Varos. Here we go.
Still not a fan of the updated theme song.
Yeah, it's also slightly loud, so I'll turn that down. Was it supposed to miss that first time?
Well, he dodged it, I guess.
I guess. Still sounded like it hurt.
Yeah.
Not only that, twice managed to get yourself lost in the TARDIS corridors, wipe the memory of the flight computer, and jettison 3/4 of the storage hold.
I think she's trying to be Southern.
Managed to burn dinner last night.
Nice to see the TARDIS. We haven't seen that since the second Doctor.
It's also apparently undergone an upgrade. SpongeBob's grandfather.
That's interesting.
Don't give up, please.
Oh, it's all right for you, Perry.
Why is it okay for me?
You've only got one life. You'll age here in the TARDIS and then die. Me? I shall go on regenerating until all my lives are spent.
You would think that he would have backup batteries for the TARDIS.
It's novel, I suppose.
I'm sure the video of his execution would sell. You said we must export or die.
Yes. Yes, I did. Very well. Arrange it. And bags.
Sir?
Thank you for the suggestion.
Is this reminding you of that episode of The Orville where they keep voting on stuff?
Here, a little something to stop you sighing like a steam engine.
What is it?
TARDIS manual. I found it in the workshop, propping open a vent.
It has a manual?
Orthogonal reading is ZS plus 101 EQ.
C? Oh, Z.
Yes.
Oh, she is American then.
As it should be.
I suppose if we use the emergency power booster to bypass the failing circuits, we could just reach the planet of Varos in the constellation of
He has
cities.
question marks on his collar.
Question is, when? If we miss
Yeah.
their mining era, we'll be stranded forevermore.
Anything's better.
Probably because they didn't know what they were doing with his outfit.
The Riddler can sue them for copyright infringement.
I think the next one has like an umbrella with a question mark on the end, so...
Anger? Fear?
Hatred of you, Quillo.
Ah, but hatred of yourself as well. We all have some parts of our mind we consider unworthy.
Always seems unusual for
Some
prisoners
memory
who've
that
been
makes us
languishing for
shudder.
days, if not weeks. Always have such perfect hair.
Yeah.
Do you know what my process of transmutation does? It focuses on the seeds of fear.
It's also
in your
weird when your
mind
warden is the Phantom
and
of the
makes
Opera.
them grow until
The TARDIS has the ability to literally land on top of somebody.
I don't know if it would crush someone, but it might actually, like... It has appeared before, and, like, the person appears inside, so...
You have to admit, that does sound like SpongeBob.
Alright.
A most unfavourable report I will give.
The uniforms seem to be some kind of cross between Nazis and Spartans.
Oh,
Yeah.
my dear friend.
Slowest moving pursuit vehicle in the history of the galaxy.
Yeah. They'll get him eventually.
Run, go on, run.
I like that one. The one in the funny clothes.
So you're just gonna
These cameras,
leave your
they
friend back there?
pictures from here into every home. The whole dome
Guess
is
he's dead.
wired. Come on, we must try.
So, do we know what year this is? I mean, not in the but what year
Yeah.
it was filmed?
Oh, I like this section.
None off the top of my
I wonder if
head.
they know what's waiting.
Just sometime in the 80s.
Get me a line to patrol headquarters.
Yes, Chief?
Then check on that object found near the execution chamber. Have it brought here at once.
I'm still kind of shaky on the reptilian guy or slug guy there. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how he fits into all this.
I think he's like he's just like buying the minerals of Varos.
The viewers applaud and shout with laughter as we poor fools walk towards certain death. Who loves to
It's
walk
vaguely
almost
like
all
that
of Varos?
Arnold
The way the
Schwarzenegger
officers
film, The Running
divert
Man.
discontent,
Yeah.
questions,
There was actually another
Revolution.
Doctor Who episode, an Eccleston one, that was kind of like this, where they ended up on a bunch of deadly reality TV shows.
Animal.
Because this is really too early for reality TV.
Yeah.
The nib at least. It was just here.
Your ship has gone.
It most certainly has.
Where?
Yes, Doctor, where?
It can't be far away. Come on.
You can't summon it like the Batmobile.
No. And he summoned it once. And I kept saying, why didn't they do that again? People are like, that was just a one-time thing.
Strangers will be captured.
Oh, you're killing me.
Then we'll force them out.
The others? To the termination cell.
I think I recognize that actor. He's on Game of Thrones, and he plays just as much of a cruel character as that.
Don't go into the light, Doctor.
Normally, when he goes into the light, he regenerates.
I can't help thinking that he looks a little bit like the 60s singer Art Garfunkel.
Shut up and listen.
I must report.
You said that about Tom Baker, too.
No, I said Tom Baker looked like Harpo Marx.
Oh, okay.
No sign of life, sir.
Dead as death.
How long should I hold?
And cut it. Now.
I was going to see if the governor also looks somewhat familiar, but
maybe.
Looks like a young Robert Redford.
Alrighty. Alright. Well, that's part one of
Well,
two.
obviously the special effects and the sets are much better.
Yeah.
But again, seems kind of like padding the script out a little bit there.
Maybe. I don't know. Now, I thought I knew something about this one, but it hasn't happened yet. So now I'm wondering, maybe it won't happen. Maybe I got confused on something. Also, I noticed this is another instance where I thought it was pronounced Varos when they're pronouncing it Varos. It's like, it's another Britishism I got wrong. It's the same thing with I kept saying Davros. We said that in our Genesis reaction, but it's Davros. So, I don't know. Makes me wonder how Perry would say it if she's American. It's the first... I was going to say it's the first American companion I've seen, but technically Captain Jack Harkness is alien American, so...
So who are you?
Answer! Answer!
But if he really was dying, he would have regenerated.
Yeah. Doesn't she know that?
Maybe not. It's not a topic he brings up that often.
The most...
Soup's on.
Kinda killed him.
Kinda killed him.
Forgive me if I don't join you.
Okay. That's not going away for a while. Do these two not have jobs? Oh, good. We brought the Catholics.
The medieval Catholics at that.
Oh.
Hello.
You got Darth Vader.
Your appeal has been turned down. I'm sorry.
Perry the Porcupine? Better than Perry the Platypus, I guess.
No.
no time. You out!
Nice shot. It's weird to see the Doctor with a gun.
How could he miss?
It's pretty bad aim.
Must be a stormtrooper.
I guess. It's not like those bullets do them any favors.
They must have made some kind of deal with a golf cart company.
Yeah.
When the final vote is avoided, the chief officer is empowered to insist on a final vote.
Well, that's convenient.
You must accept full responsibility for failing to quell the prison rebellion.
The chief draws a name. The unlucky winner is brought in here and forced to go.
In fear of suffering the same
Guard
death.
looks like Kirk Cameron.
Yes.
So the mini searchlights serve what purpose?
I don't know.
They've been all through both episodes, and yet they don't seem to do anything.
Oh. No! You've messed up the whole system. They'll be coming round for you. Voting twice and using someone else's voting box. Both criminal offences.
If you value your lives, don't touch those tendrils.
He just touched one, didn't he?
Maybe.
Other side.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe those were branches.
Do you think you can attach this string to that clump of vines without killing yourself?
The Doctor always have a ball of twine in his pocket.
I guess. Didn't the fourth Doctor have a yo-yo?
Maybe.
Let's get away from here.
Well, I guess he can say he didn't kill them.
I guess.
Report of Zyton 7 traces found on asteroid Biosculptor. Invasion of Varos cancelled.
Ways of the
unit.
I think he needs more than water, Perrier.
Like cyanide.
Oh, come, Perrier.
Oh, that's
This
the
is
worst
justice.
fun ever.
What about that transmogrifier?
No more executions? Torture? Nothing?
It's all changed. We're free.
Are we?
Yes.
What should we do?
Dunno.
All right.
Okay then.
Made sense.
Well, yeah.
It's all right.
Well, yeah, certainly the special effects and the script in the second half was much better. Again, you know, we love to think of science fiction as being metaphorical, and I'm not sure where this was coming from. Again, if this is early 80s or late 80s, I mean, there were things happening all around the world at that time, but
No.
I can't quite pin this down.
Makes me wonder. I might have an exact time. I can't read that from here. Bump this up a bit. 1985. That was from 1985.
Well, the only thing I can think of from that time period is we're beginning to see the disintegration of the Soviet Union. And again, I mean, you could say then that the Russian people were being freed from communism and literally had no idea how to deal with democracy, but they didn't really delve into that.
Yeah.
This was, exploitation of resources. Although, again, it was the somewhat fascist type of government. So I'm serious. I mean, it was okay. I enjoyed it, but I'm still left wondering what I was supposed to think about it. What was the message that they were trying to make?
Maybe if it was something like on oil, foreign oil, but I mean, I don't know. Was that a thing that was worried about in '85?
Well, the Russians were again just beginning to capitalize on their oil reserves, and yes, American companies in the 70s had been exploiting the Middle Eastern countries. It's one of the reasons why Iran had a revolution in 1979. Essentially, the right-wing people there, the Islamic Revolution is what they called it. They had to kick out the Shah, who was being essentially funded by the United States, so that they could control their own oil. But again, that had been going on for quite some time. If this is 85, I'm not seeing the actual connection.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is the first one where there just isn't a connection. It just
could be.
I mean, we were vaguely able to connect the last one to British colonies and colonizing Africa and stuff like that. And it's kind of, but was that a big deal in the 80s necessarily?
Yeah, not that I remember.
Although you could say that too about Genesis of the Daleks, which we watched, which was here it's the Khaleds are basically the Nazis, and then from them come the Daleks. If that was in the 70s, don't think that was a big issue in the 70s, but it's just something they commented on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It could just be that they just sort of... It's just a run-of-the-mill plot. I mean, when you think about, maybe even new Doctor Who, not every episode... I don't even know how many episodes would be connected to something like these have been.
But then again, if it's not being metaphorical, if it's not involved in some kind of social or political issue, then as a science fiction script, it leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, the poisonous plants at the end, a little bit Deus Ex Machina. Here we're going to kill the bad guys all at once from something we've never seen before. That wasn't set up in the first part, and just suddenly it's oh, he's got a hickey on his neck, and it must be the plants. And the two guys who were chasing them, although we did see them earlier, and there was something about they had been tortured, and maybe they were cannibals. Again, that was not much of a setup.
Yeah.
The basic story was very good, but there were a lot of loose ends around the plot that just seemed to be thrown in.
It was definitely very strange, because the basic thing is okay, we're going through because we need to get this thing to power the TARDIS, and I guess there's this whole conflict going on with the prices of this, and it's I guess the squid dude, I didn't catch his name, but I
thought it was Syl or Sin or something.
Syl,
it's very hard to understand him.
Yeah. So him, we'll just call him Syl. I guess it was that Syl he was trying to buy all the mineral from Varos, but I guess he was just buying it really cheap, and the Doctor had the knowledge of here's how you can get a lot more out of this, and Varos can prosper. And then on top of that, even though it didn't exactly connect to it, we had the whole voting system, But again, that just sort of seemed to be there, almost as if that was just a thing to create some tension with, like, well, we don't know how long the governor's going to last. Our one sort of ally is going to die.
Now, again, especially for our British fans, forgive me for what I may be about to say that would offend.
Oh, boy.
Well, no, it's just that the British parliamentary system is very different from the American system.
Yeah.
Because we have regularly scheduled elections, and the only time that ever changes is if a representative or a senator or the president resign or something like that.
Right.
But in Great Britain, the parliamentary system is essentially, they can, although they do have regularly scheduled elections, they can call a vote of no confidence in a government, in which case, a government could have been there only for a couple of months or maybe even a year or two into a 3 or 4 year term, whatever it is, and then they can vote them out. So I don't know if that was a comment on the British parliamentary system, which can, in some instances, lead to instability. You elect a government expecting that they're going to do all the things that they promised, and then suddenly, the bottom falls out of the oil market, or the whatever the something 7 mineral was.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know. It was an interesting premise, but again, for American audiences, I don't know that the average American would have understood the underlying British government of it.
I just sort of viewed that as it's just that they vote on everything, which was sort of like I mentioned. Hopefully, I remember to leave it in the actual reaction. But I mentioned that episode of the Orville, where like they go to that planet and every last thing is voted on, and they get into trouble when Lamar humps a statue, and it's all popular opinion. And I guess that was just the same way here, is that we kept cutting back to this couple, and I guess they were the representation of the people of Varos, even though we only saw the 2 of them, and they didn't seem to get along with each other. But I guess they did have like opposing views and stuff.
And I couldn't tell, was she his wife, just a companion? Was she his mother? She certainly looked slightly older than him. So, that was not extremely well established.
Yeah.
Although, and again, forgive me, that may have been established in their opening scene, but their accents were very thick. Now, I'm used to some very thick British accents coming from all over the country. I love the North, I love the East, love the South. And the Scottish and the Welsh and the Irish are in a category all by themselves. But I couldn't quite understand what their relationship was.
Yeah, like...
and there's no closed captions on any of this. Maybe we could watch the closed captions.
Not on Google Drive, I don't think.
Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe I can find a script and we'll figure that out off camera or something. But yeah, it's like we just kept cutting back to them, and they were sort of our representation. Like, these are the people of Varos, and they just vote on anything and everything, and it's like, cool. Yeah. So, and you sort of brought up, like, you mentioned their uniforms did kind of seem Nazi-ish, and it's like, okay, well, and they also seem to have a government that makes a lot of decisions. That's a bad way of putting it, but maybe it's not like a monarchy or anything, but it's like they seem to have a lot of control, but at the same time they bend to the will of the people, except for that last part where the mustache guy could just force a vote, and he gave his side of the story first, so it makes the governor look bad. It was just, I don't know, it's like it's the people's choice, except when it's not. And then it's like, but we still hold that it's the people's choice. And it's like, I guess until, even that guy, the first guy that was chained up, like, they hadn't voted on it yet. They were going to vote on it because they said, he's made an appeal to the governor and the governor hasn't looked at it yet. And then they just decided, well, we'll kill him anyway because we need to get the ratings. So and that was still like, we need to get the ratings. Why? Because we need 10 more minutes to figure out this pricing situation. Yeah. It's like, it was like 2 different plots that they tried to work together, but it didn't quite always connect.
I will say that well, actually, this really would have started in the 60s, but it's still technically going on today. We are very worried about how all of this stuff is swayed by media, whether it was radio in the 40s and 50s, and then television in the 60s and so forth, and now of course it's by social media, by the internet.
Yeah.
But again, if that's what they were trying to say, if they were trying to say that we will give the people the illusion that they're in control, except when they don't vote the way we do, then we'll do it our way and find some way of forcing that on them, making them believe it was their vote. So that would be certainly an interesting social commentary. If that was what they were trying for, it wasn't well done. Like you say, the script was kind of a hybrid, and the two halves didn't really get along.
Yeah, because it's like, we're only doing this stuff with the voting and the people's choice and everything just to stall for time on this completely different plot about pricing. And so it's...
Because if the pricing goes our way, if we get more for it, then we will have succeeded, and we can again keep the population happy. Okay, so again, it's a good theory, and it's just the execution is somewhat second rate.
Yeah. All right. I did not write as many notes as I normally do, but still got some. It's interesting that the main form of their entertainment is just punishments, and that's it. And it's like, we have the, I guess, torture and death, which was going to happen to that one guy before the doctor saved him, and we do even see that a little bit with the governor, how he keeps, if the vote doesn't go in his favor, he gets zapped, which is interesting. So if the vote does go in his favor, who gets zapped is my next question. And why, I don't know.
Now, I did think that there was a little bit of the old bread and circuses from the Roman Empire. The whole reason that they had the gladiator games and all those other things was to keep the people of Rome occupied so that they would not rise up against what were, usually very bad emperors. But it got to the point where if the people were dissatisfied, there was usually some kind of rebellion, and the emperor got overthrown, and somebody new was then brought in.
Yeah.
So, there was a little bit of the Roman Empire there, but again, there's a whole bunch of different flavors in this particular stew.
Yeah. As many flavors as there are colors on the doctor's jacket, which... That's always, anytime I saw a picture of the Sixth Doctor, I was like, that guy is really an eyesore.
Okay. But I also have one other thing to say. Now, let's face it, the Doctor's very eccentric, and we know that. So when he shows up wearing a clown suit, we can buy that. But this is one of the, main, I hate to use the word feminist complaints, but Perry doesn't have a change of clothes. She's wearing what looks like a leotard top and short shorts, and that however long she's been with the Doctor, he couldn't come up with something a little less sexist for her to wear. I mean, all of the running and everything that she did in this, it just seems like, come on, he could have found her something to wear that didn't look like that.
The TARDIS does have a gigantic wardrobe that we never see, but it's implied that it's in there. And I don't think we ever see it until... David Tennant first gets his pinstripe suit and stuff, but he does have such a vast wardrobe that you would think, maybe, but I guess it's the first companion to dress like that, so they wouldn't even think about that. It's like, oh, okay, I guess.
But that was one of the big comments, one of the complaints about Jurassic World was that Bryce Dallas Howard is literally running around in the jungle in high heels.
Yeah.
No woman who had reached her position in a park like that would have worn those shoes.
Yeah.
I will say this. One of my favorite films, and this goes all the way back to probably the early 80s, is Romancing the Stone with Michael Douglas and, what's her name? Kathleen somebody. I'll think of it. But they are stranded in the jungle in South America, in I think, Colombia, and when their bus breaks down and they are literally left to walk through the mud in the jungle, one of the first things he does, he takes out his machete and he chops off her heels and says, "There, now you'll be able to walk." So, I mean, it's just, they could have done that. There's absolutely something that they could have figured out rather than have her in a leotard and short shorts.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because no other companion is dressed that way. So it's like, I wonder, it's like, is the explanation that, well, now it's the 80s, so that's how you dress, or is it that she's an American? That's how Americans dress.
Yeah.
Because that was the confusing thing, that it's like, oh, she's American. She's not British. Like, well, how did that happen? He never finds Americans unless they come to him, and that's only Jack Harkness, and we're not even sure he's really American. He just doesn't have an accent. So, the other thing about the punishments, too, the whole turning them into animals just seemed to be there. It's like, we have the torture and we have death, and everyone loves watching that and stuff, and it's like, and we can turn them into animals. Like, why?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of that? It's like, I guess it's the entertainment. They get a kick out of that. Maybe they're furries. I don't know.
Oh, Lord, that's embarrassing. But
I don't know. It's just, they were turning them into animals, and it's like, okay. And they show the guy that does that, the dude with the mask, and it's like, okay, well, he finds it interesting that he has the technology to do that, and he's trying to figure out scientifically, like, how he can do that. It's like, okay, so we have the mad scientist, I get that, but other than the whole, like, well, I think, like, the squid guy said, like, well, I'll keep him as a pet, and it's like, you could just get a pet. It just sort of was.
And I have to say, I think the Doctor mentions that, it's something that it gets into your mind, and you basically become, or you think about that thing, and that's why the little fly on his shoulder became the big fly.
Yeah.
And she had been thinking about being a bird, and that's why she became a bird. So when the Doctor took off the mad scientist mask, all I could think of, what was he thinking of? Pizza? Because he had, half his face was a pepperoni.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he said that he was like a failed experiment on himself.
But what was he changing into?
And what was he planning to do once? Because does he retain his human mind? Is he just... I don't know. That was just another thing where it's like, that's there. Cool. Anyway, so let's just save her and move on with the plot.
An intellectual lasagna. The mind boggles.
Yes. Well, and it also, like, what definitely makes it feel like, well, that was just sort of thrown in there, is the fact that once the Doctor and the other guy get in there, and the process has already been stopped, they go in there, and it's like, oh, well, the process has been stopped, so they reverted back to normal. It's like, no other scientific way of saving them, rigging up 20 different machines. Like, no, they're changed back because we walked in here now. It's like, yeah, that was kind of an afterthought. It's like, all right, whatever. Let's see. I wrote down power, as in the TARDIS's power. How would he ever let that thing run out? Like, that's very negligent to not have anything. And then the fact that he runs out of power, which so far I've seen 20 different ways that the TARDIS has power, and I'm sure all 20 of them are used in different fashions. Right now in New Doctor Who, the explanation is that the TARDIS is powered by, like, siphoning off energy from a rift in time and space. So every so often, the Doctor just sort of plops the TARDIS in the middle of Cardiff, and it's like, well, I got energy, and then they head off. So, and then we saw in the Daleks, in the second serial with the first Doctor, there was another thing that's like, oh, well, this random piece, if we don't have this working, then we can't fly. And it's like, and now we have this. And it's like, that's a lot of different things. How would he neglect to fuel up anything?
Now, I had thought about that, but this is where our understanding suffers from not seeing it all. I mean, what was the adventure right before this? Was this something where the TARDIS would have expended a whole lot of energy?
Yeah.
But, again, at the beginning, in the very opening scene of the first part, he didn't seem to be panicked about it. He just said, "Oh, we've run." It's like, we've run out of gas. And it seems to me that had they just completed some huge adventure, then he was distracted and go, "Hey, wait a minute, what's happening? Oh my God, we're out of gas," sort of thing. But no, it was just like, "Oh yeah, the TARDIS is stalled." And
and that's the other thing too, is that he realizes the TARDIS can't move anymore. And he's like, "Oh well, guess we're just stuck here." And he says like, "Well, you're lucky you're a human. You'll die. I'm just going to sit here and keep regenerating till the end of time." And it's like, do something. You don't have any backups. It takes her finding a manual. I did not know this thing had a manual. And just plops a manual right down in his lap, and then he thinks of something. It's like, oh, wait, yes, we do have enough energy to go get more energy.
But that's kind of like your brother, who, when something goes wrong, we all look around going, "What are we going to do?" And he goes in and goes, "Here, I have the manual from when we bought this thing 5 years ago." And it's like, oh yeah. So, he's been in the TARDIS for hundreds of years, and he's probably never had to actually use the manual before, and may have just temporarily forgotten about it. And then she digs around and goes, oh yeah, there is a manual for this.
Yeah.
So you're right. There are plot holes galore in this one.
Yeah.
That said, though, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
I liked it way more than the last one. I'm sorry. I'm surprised that they stayed on the air after the whole Kinda thing. I mean, that was just. I looked at that and just going, no. I would have reconsidered watching it if the rest of and again, what was that doctor's name?
Peter Davison.
If Peter Davison's run was like that, I don't know that I would have continued watching it, because that just it made no sense to me. This guy, I can see where he's a little more eccentric. He goes back into the mold of the first, second, and third Doctors, or fourth Doctors too, that we saw.
Yeah.
But David's, it's just nothing. I didn't understand his choices or that script or any part of it.
I still chalk that up to the script just didn't give him anything, and I would assume he's a very highly rated doctor, so I assume other scripts give him more to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure, I feel like if you put him into this script, it would still work. He would be fine. So I'll just chalk it up to that script. Yeah, with this episode, I will say it's a decent introduction to the Sixth Doctor. I do feel it's sort of like Tomb of the Cybermen, where it's like, well, this is just an adventure that the Doctor is on. It's not like when we watch the Daleks, like, okay, this is the Doctor's first encounter with the Daleks. This is big. Or Genesis of the Daleks, where it's like, this is pretty big. Or a first encounter with the Master or something like that. But Tomb of the Cybermen, he had already met the Cybermen before, and he was just sort of in conflict with them, and then they got out. I will say that one was a little bit better, because I thought it was a lot funnier, and Troughton is just a more energetic, fun Doctor. But Colin Baker, he's kind of on the right track. I wouldn't mind watching more of him.
Yeah.
So, let's see. We talked about the vote, how everything was decided by a vote.
Yeah.
What if there's a vote in the middle of the day and they can't? Because it seemed like they voted in their room next to their TV. It's like, well, what if they didn't?
Yeah, again, we never established, do they have jobs? What is their relationship?
Yeah.
We assume that they're minors of some kind.
Yeah.
But
and he was kind of wearing a uniform, so I thought, like, okay, is he an officer or something? And, she's writing reports and stuff like that, and it's like, but they never went anywhere. I guess maybe it was just, this all took place after their shift, and, it was just a couple hours after their shift, so, I don't know. I wrote down Perry, interesting companion, just sort of just a standard companion, and it was interesting. This is the first time that he's only had one companion in Classic Who.
I have noticed again, though, in the first 4 Doctors that we watched, the companions actually had, structurally speaking, some kind of, or most of them had some kind of skills or knowledge that would help out not only the situation but the Doctor in particular, but the people who just are, I've randomly picked up this American, like a hitchhiker. It's like, but what function does she serve? Because she didn't seem to have any particular skills other than, persistence.
I mean, you could... It's sort of the same thing at the beginning of New Doctor Who when we pick up Rose. It's like, here's just a teenage girl that the Doctor picked up. It's like, what is she useful for? She's there. Yeah. She becomes more useful. She learns a lot from the Doctor. But then we get into the next companion, Martha, who is like, one test away from just being a certified doctor. And it's like, okay, cool. If we need anything medical, because the doctor's not a medical doctor, he's a scientist, but he doesn't do a lot with medicines or fixing the body. So it's like, okay, she has particular skills that are useful. So it is sort of one of those things where it's like, well, what do they bring to the table? It's like, just a companion, so he's not lonely. Yeah.
But I didn't even really feel that there was that much of a personal connection between the Doctor and Perry. I mean, he seemed to be fond of her, but it wasn't like, the Doctor, Hartnell and his granddaughter sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Again, that didn't really bother me overtly, but I thought, I just don't understand. Is she window dressing? Is she there because she's supposed to look good? But she didn't seem to bring anything. There were no skills. She wasn't particularly, clever. And I would think if you're going to introduce an American, you're looking at introducing somebody who has, that rugged individualism. I mean, for whatever purpose.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, Americans tend not to, take the status quo. They're that's one of the whole premises that our country is based on, is that we try to find don't accept the status quo, try to find a new solution. Don't do something that way just because that's the way it's always been done. Even if it's working, let's try to see if we can make it work better.
Right. And you're right compared to the other companions, because like the first Doctor, we had Susan, and it's like, okay, well, she's another Gallifreyan. She somewhat has a knowledge of the TARDIS and can do that. We also had Ian and Barbara, who were teachers. That worked out. We move over to the second Doctor. It's like, okay, well, we have Jamie. And it's like, well, he does help out a little bit. I think he's from, like, the 18th century, though. So it's like, okay, not a ton.
I think we kind of decided he was the muscle, though.
Right.
Because you do, every now and then, you need somebody to just crack a few heads.
Yeah. The third Doctor was with Eunice. So he had a ton of, like, good, skilled people around him. Fourth Doctor, I don't remember Harry being that useful. He was kind of there. Sarah Jane is at least a journalist, so that kind of makes sense. And even in Kinda, for all of its problems, like when we were watching that one, it's like, okay, well, these companions, at the very least, Adric, like, he was in the middle of that whole, colonizers having mental breakdowns, and he was going through and, like, surviving it and, keeping them sort of under control, and he was like maybe 15 at the most. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe Perry does more in future episodes, but let's see. We talked about the couple that they just kept cutting back to. That it's like, are they husband and wife? I don't know. They don't seem to get along, and they really take the voting seriously, like, well, at least she did. Yeah. Then it's like, no, if you make me vote for you, I will turn you in. And then she was really mad when he pressed both buttons. So, yeah. And then the prices. I guess that's sort of an interesting plot. We're going to this place where it's like, okay, they sell their minerals that they specifically say power spaceships and time machines, and it's like, cool, but I guess they're getting gypped on the price. And so it's interesting that that's how the Doctor starts to make allies there with the governor, is because he knows that they can make a lot more money and be a lot more prosperous from this. So
I thought of a plot twist at the end. When the information kept coming across the screen and the governor was reading, they found something else here, and so he's overthrowing the slug guy. I thought perhaps the Doctor had manipulated that was actually not true, and that once they overthrew the slug guy, he said, "Now, although that was not true, I can tell you that the Gallifreyans will need this stuff because we use it to power our time machines, and we would pay you much for." So but it just
because it did seem to be like this is before they prospered, and he knows where he's from. They are prospering. That's how he knows all this stuff. So it's like this is the beginnings of that, and it's like. And that would make sense because, the slug guy gave his report, and it's like, we need an invasion. And they're like, okay, we're on our way. And not 5 seconds later, they get a report, wait, we found something, we're not invading. So, and it's like, oh, cool, I guess we're going to prosper now. And it's like, all right.
Dip him in some hot butter and serve him with lemon wedges.
Yeah. Now, my only question on this... Whose vengeance is this? If this is vengeance on Varos, whose vengeance is it?
I guess it's them overthrowing the little slug guy. I mean, because they've essentially been held down. They've been oppressed by this little, SpongeBob mutant. I'm sorry, that laugh just makes my skin crawl. Anyway, so I guess it's that... other than you, of course, your mother, the English teacher, would love the alliteration of vengeance on Varos. And so who knows?
Yeah. Now, I will say, I thought I heard something about this before we watched it. I thought that I heard that the Master was in this, and he wasn't. So this entire time, I'm like, is that guy the Master? And I'm like, if it was the Master, they would have shown him immediately. Yeah. And I was like, is it going to be a twist at the end? It's like, well, the Governor's the Master. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I just kept watching. And it's like, I don't think the Master's in this. And I was like, but that's why I thought it's like vengeance on Varos. It's like, well, he's getting revenge on the Doctor. And it's like, well, that makes sense. And so that's why it's stuck in my head. It's like, whose vengeance is this? Who's getting vengeance on who? And it's like, oh, it just is. Or... is it not that it's like this is vengeance that's happening on Varos, but it's the vengeance on Varos itself? Like it's the slug guy's vengeance.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a stretch, but it's like they need a name. Yeah. Go. I mean it's kind of weird that the last episode was called Kinda. It's like, but you could have done a lot of things. You could have done like Vengeance of the Kinda or something like that. It's just Kinda. It's like that is a short name to put to that. It's like, all right. So that's pretty much all I got. You got anything else?
I'm done.
Yeah. Well, it was all right. It's pretty good.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd be willing to watch more Colin Baker. He does seem interesting. So, all right. I guess that's pretty much it. Next week, we will be moving on to the 7th Doctor, the Doctor that got canceled. Yeah. But people say he's really good. Apparently they say he's like one of the darkest Doctors, so I don't know. But we will be watching, what's it called? Remembrance of the Daleks. There's a lot of titles that it's like this of the that, and it's like, okay. So yeah, Remembrance of the Daleks. We'll be watching that next week. And yeah, that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.